The times before we wrote things down were thought to be quite dim. People think we're smarter now than they were way back then. They didn't leave us records that could prove the theory wrong, but I actually think history's been stupid all along. As soon as man rolled clay to stamp, we wrote of stupid things. A lot of dick and butt jokes and some smug, self-righteous kings. Just pompous lies and propaganda scribed on parchment scrolls, and most of that dictated by the powerful assholes. All history is stupid, and the past was never great. We've never been much smarter than today. Yeah, sure, the present's stupid too, but don't let that be cause of you. Let's try to make the future less inane. Yes, Rome built roads and aqueducts to centralize control. For privileged few, the rest could screw, go die in war or toil. No one asked for Roman rule, its glory was a joke. The plebeians were miserable till they threw off its yoke. Oh, monarchs never were divine and certainly weren't right. Most of what made that age dark was all the goddamn knights. Chivalry was chauvinist, the church was overpowered. It took 1,000 years of shit for Renaissance to flower. All history is stupid, and the past was never great. There's always been some problem with our brains. Yeah, sure, the present's stupid too, but don't let that be cause of you. Let's try to make the future less depraved. The golden age of reason saw a wave of colonization, as every petty privateer stole treasures for their nation. Explorers claimed to find new lands where folk already lived. To fix that nuisance, they just made the natives slaves or dead. The brutal age of industry paved way for automation, which could have ended hunger but just fed the corporations. The First World War was called the Great War, but of course it wasn't. It took near Armageddon just to finish up a second. All history is stupid, and the past was never great. The problem has been met, and it is us. Yeah, sure, the present's stupid too, but don't let that be cause of you. Let's try to make the future less screwed up. Now the wars are smaller, but they're just as idiotic. There's wars for culture, wars for terror, wars against narcotics. Hell, we'll fight wars for cola brands. We'll riot after games. At least the wars before us had some prize the winner gained. Today's the age of silicon, of worldwide internet. It doesn't seem more knowledge has made people smarter yet. If anything, we've found new ways stupidity can fester. Maybe they'll be smarter when the brains are artificial? All history is stupid, and the past was never great. Don't let the liars drag us back again. Yeah, sure, the present's stupid too, but don't let that be cause of you. Let's try to make the future worth the wait.
One child dead, now that's tragedy. 10 children dead, that suggests malady. 100 dead, and it's no accident. 200 dead, and it's murderous intent. 300 dead, someone should be jailed. 400 dead, because their skins weren't pale? 500 dead, now don't lie why they died. 600 dead, it was slow genocide. 700 dead from abuse and neglect. 800 dead with blessings from government. 900 dead, you can't give those lives back. 1,000 dead and still under attack. 2,000 dead, and that's just bodies found. 3,000 dead lying under the ground. 4,000 dead, guilt exhumed with the bones. 5,000 dead, hate that made them lives on. 6,000 dead, and that's just children in schools. Thousands more died under strangling rule. Born to disease, poverty, or starvation, meant to prevent a resurgent First Nation, denying them even a next generation. You can tell if a government's really legitimate by who it points out to attack as its enemies. Aggressors, dictators, the barons of trade. In Burma, they're shooting the poets. You know there's a problem in government systems when those who create are among those arrested. When artists and writers are labeled as dissidents, in Burma, they're shooting the poets. First was Kochan Tharswe, called Kezawen. Then in the streets they killed Ma Myat Myat Zen. Now 30 or more have been slain for their pens. In Burma, they're shooting the poets. And why I say Burma and not Myanmar? 'Cause soldiers don't get to say what place names are. Poets propose, then citizens endorse. In Burma, they're shooting the poets. There's not very much I can do at this range, except to speak out in a prayer for change, and hope that some people here hear what I say. In Burma, they're shooting the poets.
Oh, Vlad the Invader was bloody and bad, and he'd set his eye on some prime seafront land. He grabbed Russia's reign and he schemed up a plan to seize the Crimea for dear motherland. Old Vlad the Invader was twisted and cruel. When people objected to his vicious rule, he stuck some in prison and murdered some too, serving up bowls of polonium stew. Next, Vlad the Invader, he made up some lies, claimed Ukraine was Russian, which history denies, said Nazis were killing his people inside, then sent in his troops as the whole world stood by. But Vlad the Invader, he didn't stop there. He wanted it all, didn't know how to share. Said, give me more land or I wake up the bear. But Ukraine said, Niet, Vlad, we're not even scared. So, Vlad the Invader's got soldiers and rockets. We've got more friends. No one likes you, bloodsucker. This is our home. We could beat you with luck yet. Get fucked, or put sunflower seeds in your pockets. Now Vlad the Invader's caused thousands of deaths, but hasn't achieved his desired goal yet. His troops in the east haven't made it far west, and might lose more ground before winter descends. But Vlad the Invader is nasty and shrewd. He's hoping that cold and starvation ensue, not just in Ukraine, but all over the world, so sanctions get lifted and we'll buy his fuel. 'Cause Vlad the Invader looks forward to spring, and victories he hopes attrition will bring, a jewel to add to his crown as the king, a new Russian empire born under his wing. But Vlad the Invader keeps dragging her down, with protests and refugees still breaking out, and generals asking why he's still around. Maybe they'll team up to boot that Poot out. Though Vlad the Invader's just one of a breed, despots and monsters who feed on the weak, kindred of pestilent, blood-sucking fiends. Ending their days will take sunlight and heat. Moral police? Why, we've got them here, beating up women, non-whites, queers, those who offend in dress or hair, or just offend by being there. There's quite a few who'd take the job to wear a badge and join a mob, to walk the streets and judge their neighbor, punishing their misbehavior. Oh, cops aren't at fault, they just enforce the written law and nothing more. Do you believe that ever was true? Lessons we're missing from your school. The power to enforce, to force the rules, is often taken and misused by those who aren't so keen on justice, seeking legal forms as pretense. All with power are moral enforcers if not restrained when wielding power, and those who moralize with force are deputized when state endorsed. It wasn't all that long ago that righteous folk did stalk our roads and rounded up perceived offenders, some of whom were beaten lifeless. They didn't have official sanction, but often earned official pardon, that is, when they were held or charged, and not cheered on by leaders' words. We've wandered near in recent years to calls for new inquisitors, and prayers for purges of the hated, teachers, groomers, so-called traitors. They'd call another country cursed, for doing what they wanted first, not per the same religious verse, but otherwise, not really worse. Don't say it's any concept foreign when women for their looks are murdered. Criticize, cry for corrections, then hold our homeland to that standard.
The clans removed their hoods, and some assumes that means disbanded. And maybe for a time they had to hide, but they've rebranded. Not scared to show their faces, they take stages front and center. Hiding lies instead behind tall words bleached into pallor. They say they're Christian, proud and sure, but Christ'd never know 'em. Not a trace of what he said is in their public platform. And patriots they claim to be, supporters of our nation, but want to gut the very heart of what makes us worth saving. They claim to represent the folk, but mock the true majority, because of course those folk don't count who fall into minorities. The fancy names they used to use, like Cyclops, Dragon, Wizard, have been replaced by newer lies like honorable and officer, because slavery is now heritage and vote ID's Jim Crow. And oh, those civil rights, those new amendments, gotta go. For some have changed their robes of white for those of courtly black, just itching for a case to try to roll our country back to separately unequal and no mixing dark and light. They'd ride behind Nate Forrest wearing masks that read, States' Rights. Now, I'm not black, so some won't see why I should feel a right or need to comment on black history, but here's how that relates to me. First, I grew up in this nation, whose story's not one of isolation, and I would hope that grants some favor to comment as a friend and neighbor. Secondly, we ought to know the truths and troubles of our home, the names and acts that brought us here to present days and present fears. Otherwise, how could we forge the best and most productive course to work as equals with our friends who differ not just hair or skin, but in the way their lives are lived and in the histories of their kin, but not in wisdom or in soul. And that's the reason, most of all, that I should learn another's past, because it's just as rich and vast as any history I could claim as German, Celt, or another name. No, not as white. That's not a culture. Don't waste a short month on distractions. We could speak about creators like Lewis Latimer or George Carruthers, or noble leaders and powerful speakers like Robert Abbott or Ella Baker, names less famed than King or Carter or Maya Angelou or Rosa Parks, which goes to show we must dig deeper to see the full and honest picture. And that's just touching on the builders. We haven't started on disasters, most of which aren't taught in lessons, at least not in schools that I attended. You may have heard of Tuskegee or dropping bombs on Black Wall Street, but what about Old Wilmington and the violence around desegregation, or sundown cities, or miscegenation? That's all part of this same nation. That's history that shapes our present and troubles I don't want repeated. And if they won't be taught in schools, thanks to misled, angry fools, then all of us, not just black folk, must teach and learn and think and know these names and stories of our past, this history that gets less press, that proves the quality and strength of people bigots would dismiss, and adds its missing part to answer, how the hell did we get here? So while I haven't lived as black and cannot know the full effect, I can do my best to listen and urge you all to do the same. It shouldn't take a formal month to get across this basic point, but hey, it's here, so no excuses. Go learn about some black Americans. It is regrettable. It's so regrettable. We can't give everybody what they need. It is regrettable, just so regrettable, that good and noble goals should so compete. Like we would like to, we truly want to, give everyone who works a chance at riches, but if we catered to smaller ventures, there'd be less cash to prop up corporations. For though we might wish for higher wages, we need those funds to pay our CEOs. Without incentives, in multi-millions, we'd never have the props to boost our stock. It is regrettable. It's so regrettable. We've made this game a zero sum somehow. It is regrettable. Just so regrettable. Your children must earn less than you do now. We see you hungry, in awful poverty, and sorrow at the children who are dying. But giving handouts makes you less desperate, and you might refuse to work like dogs for pennies. Besides, those children, you say, are starving. They maybe shouldn't go to those who struggle. But no, you shouldn't. Stop getting pregnant, and no abortions, even if it's dangerous. It is regrettable. It's so regrettable. Our family plan is not to plan at all. It is regrettable. Just so regrettable. Those extra kids become new criminals. We can't be lenient, or crime skyrockets. Your civil rights must yield to civic safety. Police defunded? Who'll keep you safe then? Who'll maybe solve your murder later, someday? There's no redemption for those in prison. Just one mistake deserves a lifetime sentence. Release offenders? They'll rape and murder, even if they just went in for robbery. It is regrettable. It's so regrettable. Our biased fears must disagree with data. It is regrettable. Just so regrettable. Exploiting hate makes campaigns more effective. Give us our freedoms of speech and worship. It's censorship if we're denied a venue. But don't stop listening, or change your spending, or stop supporting businesses who hurt you. Your disagreement means you're dishonest. We'll sue for libel if you call us false. If any disagree, must be conspiracy. We don't need things like evidence or sense. It is regrettable. It's so regrettable. We're too confused by thoughts that run too deep. It is regrettable. Just so regrettable. We'll have to have unchecked authority. We value nature. Well, we're conservers. But common land is full of free resources, like trees for paper, and pristine water, and oil, gas, and coal so full of power. And you can't own air, at least not around here, so that's another place to dump our garbage. And though it might end lives, and ruin climates, cleaning up the mess is too expensive. It is regrettable. It's so regrettable that just so many things impede our profit. It is regrettable, just so regrettable. We'll have to let some die to keep on living. We were the unknown, a problem to solve. We were the mark on a map's destination. We were extreme. What that meant, no one knows. We were the extras, unneeded, forgotten. We were the kids with the catchphrase, whatever, baggy and grungy and feigning despair. Tune in and drop out? No, that was our parents. We hung suspended and learned not to care. We saw the worst years of Reagan obsession, mental health's fall and the horrors of AIDS, lost our best hopes in repeated recessions, holes in our ozone, and cities decayed. We sought distraction in tech toys and playthings. Video came to our songs, games, and homes. We waited in vain for their digital promise, virtual worlds that arrived when we're old. Call us survivors, resigned, independent. Say we weren't buying that old yuppie grind. More like there's nothing we want on the market. Do it yourself was the best we could find. Kids of today are called coddled and tender, told they're too angry, too woke, and too weird. We don't begrudge them their chaos and color, though maybe we envy their candor and care. They saw us struggling with history's delusions, foundering in shallows between rising tides, saw new tsunamis of misery rising and vowed not to drown in a new wave of lies. So fight, ladder letters, and fly where we foundered. We'll bring what we can to support from behind, bearing the remnants of hopes we thought shattered, expecting no future, told X was our sign.
We lived far before you in times long since gone. We struggled, we built, and we died. We witnessed the horrors that history harbors, but we didn't stop them, just stood to the side. Not powerful people, not monarchs nor rich, our words weren't as clever or loud. Though we weren't the monsters who sought to hurt others, the troubles they made were the crimes we allowed. We were the spectators, we were the crowd, we were the stiffs in the stands. We weren't the players who settled the scores, but we bought the tickets that paid for their games. Some were complicit, and some were disgusted, yet few stood to stand in the way. It wasn't our business what powerful folks did. We had our own needs and expenses to pay. A few preached religion or philosophized, but most didn't pay much attention, and some used those creeds as excuse for their deeds, twisting good words in our nobler intentions. We were the spectators, we were the crowd, we were the powerless mob. Although we were told we were needed to serve, we never believed we were actually strong. What could we do when the worst came to pass? What could turn troubles aside? When those who resisted were made an example and lost their possessions, including their lives. Now look at your comforts, your homes and your habits. Look at the children you've raised. Which would you sacrifice just to save others? What do you overlook just to stay safe? You're just the spectators, you're just the crowd, you're just the commonplace folk. You're not the leaders who lie, cheat, and steal. You're just the workers who do what you're told. You're just the spectators, you're just the crowd, you're only trying to live. The troubles these days aren't really your fault. Your future descendants will surely forgive.